Hi there, I'm Jen Worthington and I'm the Corporate and Community Grants Officer for Darebin. In our session today, we'll be talking about the grants that are open at the moment and also some tips on writing a grant application. So I'm going to go off camera now, but let's walk through our presentation.
So welcome to our Community Grants Information and Grant Writing session. Firstly, an acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people who are the traditional landowners of the land. I recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So in our session overview today, we'll be talking about our Community Grants Program, the Council's strategic directions and objectives. Am I eligible to apply? What can be funded? The assessment criteria, how to answer the key questions, budgets and project plans, and key dates, and also Smarty Grants. So the purpose of the Community Grants Program is that Darebin City Council is committed to supporting projects which matter to the community. Community grants can assist not-for-profit groups and organisations to address the needs and issues within their community and support Darebin residents to address discrimination and/or exclusion. Who are we aiming to support in particular? Residents at risk of exclusion may include culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, women, young people and older adults, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, people with a disability, people experiencing or at risk of homelessness, low-income earners, recently arrived migrants, refugees, or people seeking asylum, people who identify as LGBTIQ+. Who's eligible to apply for a grant? Applicants must be located or deliver activities within the City of Darebin. So you might be a large community organisation with branches all over Victoria, fine, provided that the grant activity itself is happening within the City of Darebin. To be a formally recognised not-for-profit organisation or group, so groups must be incorporated if you're applying for more than $2,000. You would be a profit for purpose or social enterprise community group or organisation. And if you're a not incorporated group or organisation, you can apply for a small grant up to $2,000, but you need to have a bank account name as the name of the organisational group to demonstrate that you're a not-for-profit and that you're not applying as an individual. So who's eligible to apply for a grant? Alternatively, groups applying for $3,000 or more may also choose to find an incorporated organisation to auspice them for the project. So auspice organisations receive and manage the funds on behalf of your group. So especially if you're a newly formed group and you haven't got your bank account or your legal arrangements in place, another organisation could apply on your behalf. You can be a school, and schools are encouraged to partner with community groups and activities that benefit the wider community as well. You can be an individual artist to lead a community-based arts or cultural project. So what else does my application need to be eligible? We need a current public liability insurance certificate, an incorporation number, an ABN or completed statement by supplier form, a financial statement as per the requirements of an incorporated association, charity or public company limited by guarantee, have no outstanding debts to council, and that we are also requesting quotes for expenditure items of $1,000 or more are included. And also that you apply before the closing date and time. We can't accept late applications, unfortunately. So who's not eligible to apply for funding? Individuals accept artists applying for the creative projects or the artist-led initiatives. Political organisations, religious organisations, especially applying for the purpose of promoting religion or proselytizing. Businesses or for-profit organisations, or applicants who haven't fulfilled conditions of grants for previous council grants. So if you have an outstanding debt to council or you haven't finalised a previous grant, you may not be eligible to apply for a new one. Applicants that own or operate electronic gaming machines, so pokies for example, or applicants who receive sponsorship or in-kind support from an electronic gaming machine revenue, applicants who meet or hold events or activities in venues that have electronic gaming machines. So if you're having an annual lunch or an annual concert or an event in a venue that has pokie machines, we won't be able to fund it. And groups that promote gambling and or electronic gaming machine venues. So what can be funded? Fees for temporary staff to implement the project. So you might want to fund the costs of either an instructor or a coach or a project manager for the duration of the project. Printing, advertising, publicity and promotional costs. Translations and interpreting costs for the event. The cost to support the participation of people with a disability or housebound elderly people. So you might want to either make entry to an event for free or provide perhaps some transport to enable people to attend. One-off non-council venue hire, not including your permanent venue. So if you have your regular clubhouse, maybe not. But if you are having an event in another hall somewhere, the venue hire for that could be included. So what can be funded? Materials and other items essential to the project. Transport costs for project participants. Public liability insurance costs. Activity entry fees for participants. Volunteers out-of-pocket expenses, so you might want to provide some transport costs for people to support you in that event, or perhaps even providing lunch. So what can't be funded? Projects that are inconsistent with council strategic directions or the community grant program aims. Projects that are the responsibility of other levels of government, so state and federal. New building projects, capital works and facility maintenance projects. Projects with a religious or political purpose which seek to promote core beliefs or religious functions. Projects funded through other council programs or activities, including grant and sponsorship programs. What else can't be funded? Projects that duplicate existing services or activities unless it can be demonstrated it meets an unmet community need. Capital equipment purchases, so telephone lines, computers, printers, power tools, audiovisual equipment, building maintenance and improvements like heating or cooling, shade sails or solar panels. Outstanding loans or debts. Projects that have already commenced or where the organisation has committed expenditure prior to the grant notification date. So for example, with these grant programs, activities need to be occurring from July onwards. If you had an event in April, for example, we won't be able to fund the cost of that. What else can't be funded? Core school curriculum activities across whether you're a primary school, kindergarten or secondary school. So applications that demonstrate a broader community partnership will also be considered, and it could be additional sort of non-curricular activities that is part of what could be funded. Gift vouchers, prizes and trophies. Our grant funding can't cover the costs of those. Recurrent rent of private venues. Any project that's also funded through an electronic gaming machine or sponsorship or venue hire. So even though a venue that has pokies might give you the venue for free, we won't be able to fund the cost of that event. Any project that also operates in a venue with electronic gaming machines, and projects that promote gambling. So we won't be able to give grant funding for a poker night, for example. So all of our grant applications must address one or more of the council plan strategic directions and objectives. And in general, there are 3 that relate directly to our grant program. So the 3 strategic directions that guide our grants in 2022 and 23: vibrant, respectful and connected, prosperous, livable and flourishing, climate, green and sustainable. So we'll give you some examples of those. Vibrant, respectful and connected. Anything that increases social connection to reduce isolation and loneliness and support positive mental health. Anything that supports the prevention of violence against women and gender equity. Anything that values and includes Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people or people from multicultural and diverse backgrounds. And that we ensure festivals, events and functions are inclusive and respond equitably to and value the diverse needs and aspirations of our community. So if you are having a national cultural day, make sure it's not just for your own members, that it's open to the broader community to attend and participate. Prosperous, livable and flourishing. Activities that improve urban streetscapes and activity centres that connect our community or encourage people to live, work and play locally. Anything that supports and advocates for housing and wellbeing needs of people experiencing homelessness. Addressing place-based socioeconomic disadvantage and health inequity in East Preston and East Reservoir. Anything that advocates to reduce the harm associated with electronic gaming machines or alcohol and tobacco. Climate, green and sustainable. Educating your community and businesses on climate emergency and zero carbon emissions. Promoting regeneration, enhancement and protection of our natural ecosystems and biodiversity. Educating and promoting how to integrate ecological solutions into our built environment. Promoting sustainable development and retrofitting practices that protect our natural assets. So what types of grants are there? We have our small grants up to $3,000 per application, and small grants that support projects that are aligned with at least one of Council's strategic directions, something that addresses local priorities, and also anything that enhances intergenerational or intercultural partnerships. Our medium grants are up to $15,000 per application, and in general there are 3 main categories to choose from. The medium grants promote anything that demonstrates social well-being, environmental or cultural benefits for our community. So we have the Environment and Sustainability Grant, the Equity and Inclusion and Wellbeing Grant, and also our creative projects or artist-led initiatives. Applications for medium grants of $7,000 or more will also need a project plan, and we'll show you an example of that. We also have youth project grants up to $5,000 per application, and the youth project grants need to demonstrate a direct benefit to Darebin's young people and also align with the youth services strategy goals. So there are 5. Healthy, connected and resilient, employed, educated and financially secure, safe and welcomed, empowered and engaged, and hopeful about the future. The Venue Hire Support Grant is also open, and this year we have up to $8,000 in kind per application. So the Venue Hire Support isn't a cash grant per se. It allows you to access Darebin-owned facilities to hold events. and also includes rehearsals too. So it encourages community access to council-owned facilities. It enables community organisations and groups to provide programs at a reasonable cost, and also maximises the use of those facilities. So there's a general assessment criteria for grants, and whether it's a small, medium or a youth program grant, in general the assessment criteria is around these things. So community need, so how your application supports council's strategic direction and objectives. Does the project address community needs? Community environmental benefit. So does the proposal identify the expected outputs and outcomes? And is there a clear link between the need and the outcomes of the activities that will be delivered? Equity and inclusion. How you're engaging groups that are at risk of discrimination or exclusion. And also the issues of social exclusion or barriers to participation. So if you are planning an event to support older adults, in your program and your project plan and even your venue, how are you making sure that the venue itself is accessible for people with limited mobility? Budget and planning. So is the application well planned and achievable within the time frame? And does the budget accurately reflect the scope and scale of the application? So what should be clear in your application? Which council strategic direction and objectives your project aligns with? How you clearly identify and explain the community's need or the issue the project seeks to address. How you're engaging one or more groups of residents who are at risk of exclusion. An explanation of how you'll be engaging community members. Also, how your project will benefit the community with more than one benefit to participants. A well-developed and realistic budget. How your project will be implemented. So when you're writing your grant application, think about the core questions of the who, what, where, why, and when. So with the who, give us some details of who's going to benefit from this project. So the project responds to an identified need for a group of people in our community. The project will directly benefit up to 25 people in which suburb of Darebin. While the whole community will benefit from this event, the project is specifically focused on assisting this group of people to learn new skills in the activity you're planning to do. The project will support up to 40 people through the delivery of how many programs, events and activities. Or children aged between 3 and 6 will directly benefit from the project. So if you are aiming for a particular group of people, tell us their ages, tell us how many, and tell us how many people you're expecting to benefit. In the application form, it also gives you a list of categories to choose from, and we ask that you at least tick one. There could be more than one group that you're aiming to reach, fine, but at least one. And this is an example of what's in the application form. So what do you want to do? We will run workshops for people with disabilities in which suburb, with the aim of increasing their skills and professional networks. Funds requested will be used for venue hire, equipment and transportation. We'll build a community garden in our school with the aim of improving health and well-being, social connections and volunteerism between school children and residents of the local aged care facility, for example. Funds will be used to purchase materials, to fund a facilitator, to build the garden beds, supervise participants to establish, plant and grow produce that can be used in cooking classes and morning tea at the school for participants. Building evidence. So the why. Council plans and strategies. State, federal government plans and strategies. Group membership trends and community requests. Surveys, existing and potential members, or letters of support. So this is the why. So our consultation with X found that this group of people didn't have the skills or training to apply for jobs in 2021. The 2021-25 council plan showed a need for XYZ. A community meeting with X amount of people highlighted strong interest in the project to be pursued as a priority for our suburb. Our suburb has been without an XYZ facility program since 2015, but our organisation has faced an ongoing demand for this. Or a report commissioned by the Smith family in 2018 showed that young people who participate in community events and activities are more likely to complete Year 12. So this is an example of how plans or community consultations or surveys or meetings or reports are built into the reason why you're applying for this grant. Think about the project benefits as well. So how will your participants benefit from your project? Is it a skill or learning a new language, for example? Confidence or self-esteem. Is it physical or mental health? Is it awareness and education? Or is it supporting social connection and partnerships? The when, the how, and the where. So the project will be undertaken in a number of venues in the suburb between September and April. This timing will enable key beneficiaries and other people attending to have optimum opportunity to participate because the project has several stages. This grant is for the first stage, which will commence in July and conclude by September. Once this stage is complete, the next stage can commence. The project will be conducted at the community hall. This is a local government owned facility. We've attached letters of permission for this project and confirmed the time frame of October for the project to be undertaken. So in terms of your project planning, and if you're a visual person, think about sort of what the project is. What the project is, the stakeholders, so who's going to be involved and who's going to benefit. The deliverables, so what will happen at the end of the project, the timelines when it will happen, the risks and solutions. So for example, if there's a risk of injury, or also how you're going to make your activity COVID safe. The resources, is it money? Is it materials? Is it a venue? Is it people? And the evaluation, if you're aiming for 50 people, how are you going to know that 50 people attended and benefited it? So for projects that are $7,000 or more, we are asking for a general project plan. And the project plan, this is an example of kind of what should be included. So the key tasks, so what's going to happen, who's going to be responsible for it, what will happen at the end of those tasks, and when. So for example, you might want to establish a project working group to sort of help with the planning and making the event happen. You'll need your working group to create a project plan and agree on it. You might need to book venues and facilitators. You'll need to create maybe some promotional material to how you're going to advertise the event. You also might want to have some surveys or consultations with the group about how the activity is going to start and finish. You also probably need to develop some resources for the event happening and making the event happen, of course. Then also the evaluation. So how are you going to be counting people that attend? If you're planning for 50 people, did the 50 people attend? or maybe you got more. Tell us. And then also the final reporting. So the receipts, the acquittal report, pictures of the event happening, putting that in to close off the grant. There's also a gender lens for project plans. So if you are aiming for youth, how many men, women, boys, girls, or gender diverse people are you planning to reach? How are you also going to consider the different needs and interests of the different genders of groups of people that you're planning to aim and reach? And so, for example, are you going to be providing, are you going to be creating an event that's accessible for young people? Is it going to be daytime? Is it going to be nighttime? If activities are happening late at night, what other provisions are you going to make sure people can arrive and leave the event safely? How much will it cost? So the budget should reflect the scope of your activity, and also consider all the costs, including the less obvious, like your marketing, admin time. Get quotes for larger items of costs that are $1,000 or more, and use community local standards as a guide for the average costs of things. You can also include screenshots of catalogs or screenshots of stores online to demonstrate the standard costs for things. And then also your income, so the contribution from your group or other partners and supporters, and also in-kind contribution, so especially the cost of volunteer time. So keep your budget realistic and don't inflate or underestimate the costs of things. So with your income, let's say you're applying for a grant that's $15,000. You might have in-kind contributions. So if it's an art exhibition, you might have paint donated to the value of $2,900. You might be selling tickets for the event, and you might also have a book fair to raise funds. All up, the cost of your income will be $18,900. Then you have your expenditure. So for example, you might have a sports coach, an instructor, a supervisor, a project manager. How much do they cost per hour? Your project workers might be contributing some volunteer hours for free. You might have the costs of set construction and costumes, public liability for the event, the venue hire, for example, the lighting, the sound, community bus and bus hire, flyers and posters, or tea and coffee or snacks for rehearsals. So your expenditure is $18,900. So when you go into Smarty Grants, it'll look a little bit like this. And all of these things are editable. So if they don't apply to you, you can take them out, but your income and your expenditure at the end needs to balance. So with quotes, we're also asking that quotes are included, and if you can, get copies of those sent to you as part of your application. So the quote should have a date to make sure that the date is kind of relatively contemporary, so recent as much as possible. The supplier details, if they have an ABN or an address, a clear description of the items and the cost, and also to make sure that it's listed in your application as well, that they match, and don't include GST in your grants budget. So some grant writing tips. Assume the reader knows nothing about your organisation, project or community. Remember, your application is assessed by a panel and it's a combination of people which may not be familiar with your group. Avoid technical language and define words where you can. Spell out acronyms. So if you have a GHT or an ABN, all those things, unpack them. Give us the full name. Use evidence and not opinions to support your project reason. So it could be a council strategy or a report or a survey. Be clear what you're going to use the funds for. Triple check your budget and attach all your requested documents. And also ask someone who knows nothing about the project to read a draft application. It needs to make sense to a stranger. And grant panels will assess only what's submitted. So when you go to Smarty Grants, so we have our council website. This will take you to the Smarty Grants page. If you've registered already, you can just log in. If you haven't registered, it'll ask you to create a registration. It'll also take you to the page of all the grants that are open at the moment. And to save you time and also, also data as well, I suppose, we suggest that you download a preview form straight away and create answers in Word offline. That way you can do this at your time and pace and you're not wasting your data or your internet time. Then once you have your answers in Word, you can always cut and paste and upload them into the document. You can go in and out of Smarty Grants as many times as you like. So if you're registering for the first time, think about using a generic email address. If you have it under your own personal email, if you leave the organisation, it means everybody else in your group won't be able to have any record of the grant, and it'll be really difficult to report on it later. And also remember your password. Once you're in Smarty Grants, keep saving every 5 minutes. It'll keep, otherwise you'll need to be starting from scratch every time. We're suggesting downloading a copy of the application form and working offline, and also allowing enough time to upload files. It takes time. And once you hit submit, that's it, more or less. If you don't receive a confirmation of submission from Smarty Grants, it means your application may not have been submitted. So make sure that you get that confirmation. And also do it way before the deadline. So our key dates, our Smarty Grants applications and our grant program is open. It's been open since the 4th of April. It closes on the 31st of May at midnight. Applications will be screened in June. Notification of results will be in July, and payment will be happening between July and August. The general project completion time is the 30th of May and final report due in June 2023. So what happens if my application is successful? Successful applicants will need to sign a conditions of grant form. It outlines how much funding has been approved, the period for how long the grant will apply for, the general conditions of grants, and also the reporting dates and requirements for acquittals. So our information and resources for the council plan can be found on this website. We also have our grant webpage with more information of all the grants that are open, and you also have a contact for me. So thank you and good luck with your application. And if you need any more support, by all means, you can contact us. Thanks very much.